Welcome back, everybody. We're here getting in a college coach conversation. I've got my two co-hosts and most frequent guests, Ian, Sally, and Shannon. We are celebrating 8 years of a weekly college coach podcasts. Again, I failed to do the math over the break, but that's a lot of podcast episodes. I'm just saying.
I
So
think I think I did it. Is it 400?
Over 400.
is
Yeah,
it? We had a
Yeah.
big
ish.
celebration when I hit 300 and I lived in a place where I could actually drive to the party store and get balloons and I got balloons and it was really exciting and there are no party stores around here, so
Well, you know
yay,
what?
400 plus.
You know what
Huh?
I was just thinking, Beth, when we started, if this was 8 years ago, your son Jack is a little bit older than my daughter Maya is now. She's 10,
Hmm.
and I've got a son who's 8. And as Shannon was talking through the changes in the FAFSA, I was like, "Ugh, don't say this to me," because I had a two-year old and a nearly 1-year-old at the time, and I was like, "This two kids in college thing is going to work out great for me." And now it's like, okay, hopefully in the next 8 years there'll be another change that'll benefit me
Right.
and my family situation. But Beth, Jack went through this process. I mean, you were starting this when he was pre-middle school, and
Yep.
now he is in his first year in college.
Yeah.
How has your just sense of his approach, like how has that colored your experience both as a host and as an expert in the space?
It's that's a super interesting question, and I think the big thing for me is it's not just hosting the show, but also just doing this work. Is that over the years, I have definitely become incredibly open to all the different opportunities that are out there as far as college is concerned. When I started here at College Coach, I went to Cornell, I worked at Penn. I had a pretty narrow view. I traveled with Georgetown and Harvard and Duke, and I had a really narrow view of what college meant, what it was, what was out there. And there's zero question in my mind that working here and doing this show has really helped me see how many great schools there are out there. I mean, just by going on tours everywhere, every tour I go on, I'm like, this place is awesome. Like,
Yeah.
Jack could go here. Karen Crowley, who was here and has been a guest on the show before, she and I always used to joke, like every school visit we went on, we were like, oh, Jack could go here. Teddy could go here. She has 3 kids. So after that, it became like Zoe could go here.
Yeah.
So that for me has been a big, huge positive, and it's another thing that I always hope that our listeners will take away, which is
Mhm.
that while there are some big brand name schools that are out there, that isn't necessarily the sweet spot for many, if not most students. And one thing I think that's unique about Jack is that when it came down to making his final choice, he chose the school that truly fit him best versus the school that was the most selective of those he got into. And a lot of people, even if they don't want to think about it this way, they encourage their students and the students feel the same way. They choose the most selective school that they get into rather than because somehow selectivity is best. All selectivity is about is supply and demand. And
Mhm.
Right.
the longer I do this work, the more convinced I am of the truthfulness of that just because it's really difficult to get in does not make it the best in any stretch of
Mhm.
anyone's imagination. So that's one big thing that's changed for me. How about you for you guys? Like we just talked a little bit about all some of the things that have changed that we covered in those early stages. And I guess, what are some other changes either that you feel you think differently or that you see in the college going world that you think are great or maybe less great? I obviously think that change I went through is a really good one. It's certainly beneficial to my child. And my wallet, I would add as well, because it was one of the most well priced of his options that he chose. So, Sally, I'll start with you.
Well, a big change for me has been doing a lot of research on the trades, workforce options, things like nursing, and just kind of recognizing that for some students, that's really the right path. I'd been kind of throughout my career, I'd been moving more and more towards that, but really my background is small liberal arts and sciences college. I worked at institutions that really value that, although Whittier also had a business major at the undergraduate level. But, it was really about like education for its own sake. And over time, I've just realized that higher education is just not some place where everybody's going to thrive.
Right.
If you're going to thrive, if you want it, I want you to have it. I absolutely am. Like, I can't state that enough. I am in no way, shape, or form diminishing what I think the value is of higher education, but it simply isn't for everyone. And so I really, I've just been much more comfortable recently kind of saying, if you really dislike school that much, maybe consider, if you're the person who tinkers in your garage, maybe consider one of the building trades, which are actually very well paid middle class occupations.
Right.
And so that's been a big change with me. As college coach itself has kind of started looking at that more. I've really gone along with that.
Yeah. Shannon or Ian? Shannon, how about you?
Yeah, I would probably, to piggyback on that, I think I have seen, like, it's not just us who's thinking this way of considering the trends, considering less selective schools. I'm seeing it more from families, and I think much of it is related to the rising cost of college and people thinking about the value and is this for them? And certainly overall, college is a tremendous value on average. It's going to increase your earnings power over $1 million over your lifetime. But thinking about the fact that there's not just one way to do higher education, and families considering all of these different options and thinking about what's going to provide them with the most value, kind of taking more control, over this process. I think one of my favorite topics to talk about on the podcast and just in life, I like to shout it from the rooftop, negotiating to get a better deal on college. I love that topic because I think it is one really clear way where like families grab control over this process. I think there was 8 years ago and still exists today, this kind of, I think, feeling that it's easy for families to feel out of control in the college admissions process, like their fate is in someone else's hands. But I think more and more families are kind of taking more control of this process. And again, negotiation is where I kind of see it the most. And that's becoming, I think, more. A lot of people still don't know that it exists. We're trying to get it out there as much as possible. But I think it's becoming more known, and just more information about the college admissions process and how it works. Big books like Ron Lieber, friend of the pod, Jeff Salingo, he came on to talk about his book. People are understanding more about how this whole process works and sort of taking control of what they can in this process. And I think that is a trend I've seen growing, and I hope it grows even bigger.
Quick addition to that, and then Ian, I want to toss it to you. But when you were talking, I was thinking about taking more control and different ways to do college. One great way that some people are doing college is they're getting their company to pay for it. And yes. Bright Horizons will pay you to go to college if you have a job in one of their centers, one of their childcare centers. So if you love kids and you want to work with kids, you can do that, get paid, and earn your undergraduate degree while you have a full-time job and are getting paid. So the payment is not the degree.
Who does that?
Is not the degree, right? Exactly. The payment is you're getting paid for that job, but then you also get your degree. And there are other companies out there doing similar things. So again, not for everybody, and it's going to be a different college-going experience than it would be if you are heading off to a four-year institution that is going to be residential. But it's a very viable option for people who are looking and saying, either I don't want to go into debt or I can't for whatever reason. So, Ian, what about you? What are some of the things you've seen or something?
I would just, first of all, I just want to say how proud I am to work for Bright Horizons College Coach. When I was working at Reed College, I would every day get in front of a room and really highlight the uniqueness of Reed. And it is a unique institution, but I was talking to a very small subset of college-bound students. And working here has just helped me to see so many different kinds of possibilities and has really changed my perspective even on what my own kids can look at. I mean, I had very similar kind of experience to what you've had, Beth. And it's because we get to talk to so many different families and you get to see talent and curiosity in so many different shapes and sizes from students. And you recognize that that's something that can be found just about anywhere. So, I've really come to see that the greatest predictor of successful outcomes is going to be the student and their personality and how they engage with their learning experience. And I try and repeat that as much as I can with families that are concerned about where a student's going to get in, where a student's going to go. I think that that's much less important than what a student brings to the table. In terms of changes, I think, this is something you'll see a lot when there's writing about higher education, but one thing that I am growing a little concerned about is trends of students really looking more towards pre-professional kinds of undergraduate programs. Computer science, I think, is something that comes up quite often. And I have nothing against computer science. I think it's a really interesting field. But I worry about students who express an interest in computer science, but don't necessarily have a sense for why it's interesting to them or how they want to use it. What's the way that they're going to wield these skills, this technology, in order to make a difference in the world? And, you bemoan the loss of the liberal arts and this sort of interdisciplinary approach to understanding how the world works. But, computer science is not just about knowing the code. It's about saying, how can I use this to improve lives of people? And in order to be able to do that, you have to understand what people need and how people interact and engage. And so history and philosophy and English, those classes continue to be really, really important. And, I worry also about this. You're seeing right now, a little bit of a recession in technology specifically. And you have so many students who are graduating with CS degrees that are looking for jobs in space where a lot of big players in there are cutting jobs. So I will say forever, learn how to learn, be flexible, understand how to do the jobs of the future. And it's going to be much more important in most cases than, preparing for a very specific thing that looks lucrative right now.
Right. Yeah. I fight that fight all the time. Sorry, just around medical school, it feels like such a clear path. And so many bright students feel like that's the path they should be on because it's simple. It's not simple, but you know exactly what you need to do in order to achieve it. Yeah. And yet, how many of them will ultimately change their mind? I see medicine as a calling and not as I want to make money and be a professional. And therein, Sally, what were you going to say?
Well, that's just exactly what I was kind of leading into, is that this desire, especially for everyone, to have that clear path. And they know if you study computer science, you go into computer science, right? If you study history, what do you do? And they find they're, and I use myself as an example all the time. As a history major, I then went on to work in education. There are these other options. But I think it is tough. The other thing that I get really concerned about too is, I had a conversation with a family, a couple of years ago. Their student, I was looking at his transcript and he had B's in all of his math classes and they were at the college prep level, and he had A's in APs in history and English, and they were talking about computer science for him. And I was like, no matter how much you pound on that square peg, he's not going to fit into the round hole. And in the process of doing it, you're going to damage him. It was so strange to me that I couldn't, it's not up to me, it's their child, their student, but I was like, I'm really seeing more talent in these other areas, and our philosophy is really to build on your talents. And it just was not so connecting. I just finally had to say, he's got to get A's in math, he has to do this, he has to do that, and none of which he was going to be able to do at the high level that they wanted him to do it.
Well, he certainly hadn't shown that ability at that point, right?
To be fair, it doesn't mean that it wouldn't have happened later, but in general, that was not, the past is the best prediction of the future. So.
Yeah,
but to your point, Sally, I think that there's often people want to hurry up and establish their kids as fully formed products when they're applying to college, and nobody should be that at 18. Part of the goal of college, and even your post-college experience, your first jobs, the friendships that you develop, is about shaping the person you're going to become. You really have to wait until your 30s and maybe even beyond to identify, what am I really good at? How do I bring, something special to the table? And I hope people can get to be more comfortable with uncertainty, right? Like not knowing exactly what's right, but feeling confident that I'm a smart person. I'll figure it out. I'm interested in these kinds of things. I don't know exactly what the answer is for me right now, but when it comes along, I'll be able to recognize it. I'll be able to seize it, and I'll be ready. And the more people can do that, I think the better off they are heading into college and beyond.
Yeah, I agree. Very, with the time we have remaining, so when we conceived the idea of this podcast, and actually the podcast kind of found us. So I got a phone call from someone at Voice America who said, "Hey, we want to do a podcast on college admissions, and we think you should host it." And that was really awesome until I then found out that there was a cost associated with that, which was a little less awesome, right? Like, oh, this big opportunity. How much are you going to pay? No, you're going to pay us. Oh, okay. But I did see it in that moment. And I remember talking to Karen, who we mentioned earlier, about the vision that I had for, I just thought this could be a great space for us. And Shannon, early on, you did all of our programming on the finance side, right? So you kind of were in that producer role. I said I didn't have a producer for the first 13 episodes, but you gave me all the finance segments that you thought we should do, and then helped me find the people who should talk about them. So in essence, you were our first producer. I'm curious what your vision was, or what you thought that this podcast could accomplish when you were helping me with those early episodes.
I had absolutely no idea. I had no grand vision. I did not know, like you said, we were contracted for 13 episodes. I had no idea if it was going to go beyond that or not, but I thought it sounded like a fun opportunity to potentially reach more people. I didn't know if anybody would listen, but
Fair.
But it can, in the spirit of what we talk about a lot, control what you can and let go of the rest. We'll put the information out there. We'll see if anyone listens. Turns out they have, but I just thought it was a great opportunity to do something new, speak, on a different platform, reach some new people. We love doing what we do every day in our jobs and working with the families that come to us directly and the families who get to talk to us through this benefit provided by their employer. But obviously that is a small fraction of the potentially college going population. And there's so many more people out there that we weren't speaking to. And I thought this could be a cool opportunity to reach those people. So I thought, why not give it a shot? No grand expectations at all, and it has surpassed my wildest expectations.
Yeah, me too. Sally, what about you? Any thoughts when you initially became a co-host, and we had committed at that point, I think we had committed to the whole year, or at least 13 more segments. And I realized quickly, I need help. I need co-hosts. Ian and Sally, you stepped in. And I think at that point, I may have even gotten a producer to help with figuring out the segment. So I'm curious if you had any thoughts in those early days about what this could be or do.
I didn't think I realized it was going to reach so many people. I mean, I know it could reach more. I know it's small potatoes in the world of like influencers and things like that. But to me, this is kind of astonishing. Another thing is just how much I knew it would be fun, but I guess I didn't realize it would be this much fun. And just on a personal level, I was so nervous initially, and now I'm not really nervous anymore. And it's kind of
surprised to hear that, Sally. You're so good at it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. I mean, I appreciate it, but I was terrified the first time Beth asked me. Part of me wanted to really do it, and that part won out, but I was afraid of it. And then when you asked me to host, Beth, I'd actually been thinking about volunteering, like saying, would you want some help? Because I liked it so much. And then I spent the next week before saying, why did I volunteer to do this? But I figured if I played it out, I would be fine. And I am. And it's actually definitely one of the favorite things that I do. So that's on a personal level. And it's just been kind of nice. I thought I would get here, but it's nice to know that I've gotten here, and the fact that we now have 750,000 listeners or something like that, that doesn't scare me. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Because I'm just talking to you guys, or I'm just talking to Shannon or whoever it might be.
And there's always another episode, right? So if it doesn't go as well, It'll be better
Well,
the next time.
Exactly. And one of the things I realize is that if a mistake happens, well, I watch other people, they make mistakes, even on like curated news broadcast programs. So
Sure.
that's been kind of a really wonderful thing. So I don't know if you wanted to talk about it personally, but that's been some of my thoughts
I
about
love it. I have no agenda.
Mhm.
Ian, what about you?
Yeah, I think when you asked Sally and I to be hosts, I was like, great, this is the Reed College takeover. Like we can do this.
I
like
never
2 out
thought
of 3.
about that part of it.
Let's go.
Exactly.
But
Maybe we should rethink that.
Yeah.
Can we go back in
Exactly.
time?
it's a gentle takeover. Okay,
Yes,
we're
it's
just
very
mostly going to
gentle.
talk about taking over. We're not going to actually act. I think for like 4 years, I was like skeptical that anybody was listening to us. Like I would say regularly, like, I don't know if those numbers are real. Like, it feels like it's made up. Are people actually listening to the show? But I've been fortunate to work closely with a couple of students whose parents were listeners on the show, who signed up to work with me. And it's like, you learned about us through the radio show and you want to work with me. Like, it was so cool. And Sally, you were saying that, sometimes you'll get on a call through the benefit where people are like, you're Sally Ganga from the podcast. Like, that's so cool to have that exposure. And it's like, okay, I guess people actually are out there listening to us. So that was really cool. The thing I'm most proud of about the show is especially, we had Lauren Randall that was producing for us. We've got Jennifer Simons now who's producing for us. I love that
Christine Kenyon, I think.
Christine Kenyon did some
us.
production for us.
Michelle
very early
Smoley
on.
does the finance side
And
now.
Yeah.
Yep.
So lots of great
Shout
people
out to
who've
Kathy
supported.
Ruby
Yes.
Kathy Ruby.
as well, our old
Please,
colleague.
whatever. Kathy, if you're listening, come on back. We love you. But is that, our topics have expanded and our guest list has expanded. Like, we're now talking about really interesting stuff in higher ed. Shannon, you mentioned Jeff Salingo. We've done some reading projects. At first I was like, are we just going to talk to each other every year about the same old stuff? And there is some of that, but we've found a way to keep this vibrant and make the content interesting, even for us who are asking these same questions year over year. And that's been a real surprise to me. I don't think it should be, given the talent we have on this team, but it's been what makes this interesting to do week after week. 400 episodes, like weekly episodes on college admission. That's a lot to do, and we've really pulled it off.
Yeah. Well, and as you mentioned that, we do talk sometimes about the same things. I think that's necessary because, right, as we were just talking about, there are evergreen topics that if you are just starting on the college process, we need to cover. And so when I talk to the people who are working in those producer roles, it's sort of like, the things we need to talk about, and we just need to make sure we get those in at the right time, and everything else, let's look for interesting things and see what's out there. And I know that my vision for this was, I think, in many ways similar to some of the things you guys have articulated, but I just always wanted this to be a space where you could get practical information. So there's plenty of room to have theoretical conversations, and we do, but that in every show and almost every segment, there should be things that you could take away and apply to, whether you're a student or a parent, apply to your own situation. And in that way that it would be very useful. There are a number of other podcasts out there, and that in some cases deal more with the theoretical, or they're talking to people who constantly, their theme, and it works for them and it's a good thing. It's just different is maybe they're talking to people who are doing this work and the challenges they face and the struggles they face. There are a lot of great podcasts out there about in the world of admissions and college finance. But what I love about our focus, and I believe we maintained it, and I think we should maintain it in perpetuity, is just that practical element. And so I would actually, as we wrap this up, toss to our listeners and say, hey, are we hitting that? Are we practical enough? What topics would you like us to cover more frequently? And because you've heard me say it a million times and you've heard everyone here say it a million times, right? You can shoot us a note on Facebook. You could just post it right on our Facebook page or Instagram or LinkedIn. You could tweet it at us. You can message it to us. You could send us an email. And here is the point in the show where, despite doing this for 8 years. I still don't have our email address memorized because it's so dang long. gettingin.voiceamerica@gmail.com. But, send that stuff to us. Ask us these questions. Let us know what you want to hear more about. Let us know if we're hitting the mark. Are we providing relevant information for you? Because at the end of the day, that's our goal. And while we love this, we could sit around and just talk to each other all the time. And
we do.
And we do. If it's not valuable information, then, then it's kind of useless and we're wasting our time and yours. And we don't want to do that. Okay. Thank you guys for being here. I appreciate it.
Thank you both for
My
your leadership
pleasure.
here.
Absolutely.
Great.
Well, and then in a twist, Sally, Ian, and I will be back next week. Shannon, unfortunately, will not be, but we're going to be at an admissions team meeting, college coach admissions team meeting. And so we're going to bring you kind of the latest, greatest that we're learning as we all get together as a team to talk. And maybe we'll coerce a couple of people to come on camera and join us and answer some questions.
We'll
Don't forget, we are here every Thursday at 1 p.m., 4 p.m. Eastern and 1 p.m. Pacific. Jeez,
West Coast, that's right,
I can't
Beth.
even get my clothes done, and I do the same thing every time. All right, bye, everybody.